For Sylvia, how do you create your scary scenes, and have you ever scared yourself while writing?
I have. I have. When I'm creating a scary scene, I am already watching some horrible horror movie already. So when I have to, even when I have to write sex scenes, I put on a horror movie to kind of get that tension going in me already. Like, okay, I'm scared. We're in the bedroom. Let's go. How many times can she scream? Can the character scream? Let's go back and forth. I have definitely scared myself when I have gone really off kilter and I realized I can't get dark and dirty, because on my second book, which my mom was editing, which she loved so much, was I was writing about the son of a serial killer who was going to get revenge against the prosecuting attorney by going after the prosecuting attorney's daughter. And he was terrorizing her. And I was like, how horrible can I make William, from what he had come from to what he was as an adult? Like, how horrible. And for no reason, and for one crazy reason, Abigail would not tell on him. She would not tell her father, no matter how horrible William treated her, she would not tell. And I was like, okay, let's break Abigail. Let's go in. And I was like, oh my God, I am horrible. I'm a horrible person. And she was in a wheelchair half the book. So I was like, oh my God, let's really go over the edge. But it's so funny because I often tell my husband, I'm gonna be weird this weekend. Don't talk to me. And I'm sorry if I say something that you don't like, because I'm in my, my bully character, and I'm about to go to town. Ooh, fun.
And then for Halli, you write in so many different genres. What's your process for building a magic system?
I cannot tell you how often I've practiced this answer, so I sound like I apologize. I'm not Brandon Sanderson, I'm not Tolkien, I think magic is interesting, but it's way more interesting if it has no rules. And so if we're playing Prometheus discovering fire, if it's people discovering magic and going, what can this thing do? I feel like humans enjoy things that are convenient and easy, and why not make magic easy? I really, really, really wanted to write someone who was making magical clothes. That's where I got stuck. And that's where Nathaniel came from in these books. It started with a tailor who was just making embroidery bloom and grow and die and do these pretty cool things, but what else can it do? So I kind of decided to snap all of the rules and just figure out, well, we have convenient magic, where does it come from? And that's what they're kind of dealing with when it comes to things like the world between worlds, the demigod. So I did, there's no rules. There's no rules, no.
For Amber, the Bluebird Chronicles involve vampires that live alongside humans. How did you create the world for your vampires? And how hard do you think it would be for mythical creatures to actually hide in society?
Right. I am ready. I love this question. Okay, so it took me about 10 years to perfect this world, down to the most minute detail. One thing you have to understand is I like to take mythology and play with it. I like to turn it on its head. I have werewolves. They don't transform on the full moon, they transform on the new moon. Why? Because it makes more logical sense. So my vampires aren't like the Bram Stoker, they're not the Nosferatu, they're not quite what everything else is. They also don't sparkle. They can be killed in the sunlight, but if they have enough blood and sleep, then they can, subvert that for a little bit. But for mine, it's more of a gradual process. They turn into a vampire, but then it's more of a gradual a gradual change over about 100 years, 150, sometimes 200, depending on the bloodline, depending on whether you were human or an arcane prior to being turned. Like there's so many different things, but they eventually lose their little bits of humanity. Like when you're first turned, you can still eat, you can still drink food. Like my vampires drink a lot of alcohol. They don't care. There's a couple of them that still drink coffee. Why? Because they can. They can still taste it. It takes like 120 years, and you start losing your taste buds. You know, so they're very slowly losing that humanity. They still age, they still change, but it's so slow now compared to you or I that you don't notice it. So they can blend really easily into a society. And I think in my world, there are two types of supernatural creatures. There's the Alentori and the Alarian. And the Alentori is anybody that can blend in with humanity. So you've got your werewolves, you've got your vampires, you know, anybody that looks human enough that you and I would walk past them on the street and not question it. Alarian are things that guy is blue. We would notice that. That guy's got a tail. We would notice that. They don't come out of the arcane world too much into the Karku society. So I think it, depending on the type of supernatural creature that you are, and whether or not you can, how well you can hide those bits that kind of tip you off, depends on whether or not you're going to be able to fit in. Like my witches, you would never know that. And I call them the arcane. You wouldn't know, not a clue, until they use their flair, and it's like that rose was dead 5 seconds ago. What did you do? Because now it's not. So I think it depends.
Awesome. Back to Michele. Why do you think the enemies to lovers trope is so popular, and what are some of your favorite romance tropes?
Well, you know, honestly, I've always kind of wondered how we got here. I grew up in the 80s, and it was just a very popular trope in the movies and that sort of thing. So, and it just doesn't seem to go away. And sometimes I think, well, you know, why fix it if it isn't broken? A lot of times. So I like the enemies to lovers trope, just because it's classic, and yet you can still play with it. So in the first book, Terror Under the Looping Moon, Amanda isn't just not looking for love; she's looking to not be in town, like not be in town she's only supposed to be there a weekend. So she to fall in love, I think what makes it so interesting is that you have to slowly make so much of the world that you build around the character so compelling that she's willing to follow her heart instead of her head. And I think maybe that's why it's such a compelling trope. And it makes for great world building, honestly, and character building, supportive characters. I like that, you know, and it brings a lot of humor to the story. Enemies to lovers is great. It's especially for physical comedy. And so, a friend of mine, her husband just had rotator cuff surgery, and so she could hear him laughing. And she thought, what is he? There's no TV up there. What is he doing? Well, he was reading the first book, and she hasn't read it yet. She had just gotten them from me, and she goes, "Are they funny?" And I go, "Actually, because we have the enemies to lovers, you know, kind of idea, and there are parts of it that are really funny, and that's just what makes great storytelling."
Heather, has a character ever surprised you? One of your characters, I should say. Yeah.
Ever. All of my characters surprised me because I was a pantser, so I never had a plot. And but even how I thought someone was going to be, they will flip themselves on, which I know sounds weird for people who don't write, but it's, the joke is that, you know, we're just, you know, writing up the accident report, and that's kind of true because they don't necessarily do what we want them to do, even though we're literally putting the words in their mouth. So I'm trying to think of the one that surprised me the most. It might be Oren and Moonstruck. That surprised me the most because, you know, he's like an alpha wolf shifter, and I just thought he was going to kind of be like the morally gray, and he turned out to be almost a cinnamon roll, only one with her, with everyone else, not so much. But even now that I plot, I don't stick to it. So they all surprised me.
For Sylvia, why do you think that genres like bully romances have become more popular in mainstream romance lately?
I think it's because, okay, do you want the fairy tale one or the realistic one? We're gonna about the, okay. I don't know if y'all gonna like me after this one, but I'm label for anyway. But you don't pay no bills for me. I think with the consensual movement going on, it's a facade to what women really desire, and that is a man who can just get in their lives and take the pressure off of them, take control, and get the job done. If I say do it, it's done. And with the bully kind of personalities, you know, they come in, they get the job done. If I say jump, you say how high. Sometimes I don't even have to say it, I just give you a look, and that's what it's supposed to be. And even as like, because I was a single mom for 25 years. I know I'm saying my age, but I'm old. But 53 is old, whatever.